that it all starts with GardenComm, and that's what you're going to learn here on this session. We would love to thank our platinum sponsors, Proven Winners, for helping to support us and put this event on, as well as all the exhibitors and sponsors at the event. Please go into the exhibit area and visit those booths. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our host, Joe Lample. He is the creator and executive producer and host of the Emmy award-winning national PBS series, Growing a Greener World. And he's the founder of Joe behind JoeGardner.com and creator of Joe Gardner Online Gardening Academy. Joe's also a GardenComm member and based in Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome, Joe.
Hey, Chris. Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Well, this panel really kind of came about because of a discussion that I had with you, and I would love for you to start this off by sharing your experience that you had with GardenComm.
Okay. I've had a lot of good experiences, but I'm going to narrow it down to one. And well, two. Just first of all, the great networking of wonderful gardeners, fellow gardeners of all different pathways within our industry. Deborah Prenzing's here. She was one of the first people I met on the first day of my first GardenComm experience. Remember that, Deborah?
Was it Vancouver?
Yeah, I think it was Vancouver.
I think we were sitting on the floor because there was no seating in the room.
That's right. That's a good memory. That's right. So that was a highlight. But one of the ones that, from a business standpoint, that really got me going was I was just starting my brand new television series, Growing a Greener World, that you mentioned, Chris. And the night before the rest of the event, we were seated at a dinner somewhere, and there were name tags on who sat where. And I sat down at my place, and the guy next to me sat in his tag, and it was right next to me. So we just started talking. We didn't know each other, and it was like, hey, what do you do? What do you do? Next thing you know, 5 minutes later, after I told him that I was just starting a new television series on PBS, he just said, well, how do you fund it? And I talked about, well, we have to raise our own money because it's underwriter supported. He said, how much is it? And I told him the number, and he said, I'm in. And he shook my hand, and this was a six-figure deal. And I'm like, so this is my first exposure to getting underwriting money, was sitting down at a table, having a beer with somebody that you met, and within 5 minutes, you're getting a handshake on a six-figure underwriting check. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So I think I ran out of the room real quick and called, maybe it was Teresa Lowe, my co-producer, and just said what happened. But anyway, that was the highlight. I mean, I can't believe that happened right day one of my first experience at GardenComm, although that probably wasn't my first year. But the point is, from that week on that show, or that symposium, I met several other people who became underwriters of the show as well. And again, these were all, nice. I mean, that's what funds the show, to be able to do it all. And that all came from being at GardenComm, not to mention that same one, meeting the publisher of my first book and just sitting on the bus talking. And it's amazing the networking that happens.
I absolutely agree. And thank you for sharing that story, Joe. And now I want to get to, if you all in the panel can introduce yourself, tell us your name, who you're with, and how long you've been a GardenComm member.
So I'm Jessica Reinhardt. I'm with DRAM Corporation, and we have been a member for 22 years.
Wow, impressive.
3 years.
Noelle?
I'm Noelle Johnson, and I am also known as AZ Plant Lady, and I'm a horticulturist, digital creator, and consultant, and I help people garden in the desert, and I've been a member for 8 years.
Awesome. Shannon?
My name is Shannon Downey. I'm the creative marketing specialist for Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs. I personally have been a member for 10 years, and I have no idea how long as a company we've been involved. It predates me.
Fantastic. Deborah?
Hey, I'm Deborah Prinzing. I'm the founder of the Slow Flowers Society, and I joined I joined GardenComm in 1999, and 3 years later, I was the co-chair of the National Symposium in Seattle. So watch out when you join. You get asked to volunteer.
But that's awesome. Sean and Allison.
Hi, you guys.
Hey there.
We're Sean and Allison McManus. We're Spoken Garden, and we have been members since what, 2019.
Yep.
So not very long, but we've had amazing experiences ever since. So we've grown to become authors. We're on YouTube. We have a podcast. So we have a lot of fun, and we've met so many amazing people.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think you're all just a wonderful group to have together. I have to say, you kind of been hand selected. So I have personal connections with each one of you. So thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to hearing your stories and hearing about your GardenComm experiences. So with that, Joe, go ahead and kick us off with the first question.
Okay, I've got a little list of questions here. And so the first one is a simple one. What brought you to GardenComm, and how did you first hear about it or become involved? And Chris, I'm not sure how we determine who answers what, but maybe you can kind of guide that.
I'm going to ask that question to Sean and Allison.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. Well, we came to GardenComm through actually Twitter. We'd been blogging and podcasting for a while for Spoken Garden. And we actually got contacted by CL Fornari through Twitter on a direct message. And she said, hey, did you know about this? You should look into this. Look at coming to the symposium or the annual convention. And so we did, and we signed up and we went.
That is fantastic. And I think that just shows that, GardenComm is constantly doing outreach to people who are, great communicators and inviting, the best of the best in. So this is really what we have at this, with this organization. Anybody else want to answer that question and share their experience?
I'd love to, if it's okay.
Yeah.
I was kind of a brand new garden writer in the Seattle market, and I met Marianne Benetti. And many of you may know Marianne. She's just the most generous big sister I've ever had. She was a syndicated newspaper columnist. I really looked up to her, and she told me about about GWA at the time, which became GardenComm. And she encouraged me to join. And she is the person who instigated getting me even more involved for that 2002 meeting. But I just have to say that I think Marianne, like, the mention of CL, there are people who really are ambassadors and missionaries for this organization who are helping bring people into the tent and not seeing someone as a competitor, but seeing them as a peer. And I definitely credit Marianne for that.
And one of the things that I love about the organization, this is even a question on the list, but I think, Deborah, you brought this question to mind, is that one of the things I think that GardenComm does really well is to make sure that the content that gets out there is great information that you can rely on. And I think Shannon probably has a good story about how they put content together that is, great information and great outreach to the consumers.
Well, one of the main things that we're looking for are different avenues to tell stories about plants. And we can shout from the rooftops about how much we love our products because we've watched them develop and be trialed and tested. But it's not the same as coming from somebody else, coming from a garden communicator. And it's been really incredible to watch the type of communications grow, where it was when I started a lot of newspaper columnists or radio show hosts. And then it expanded into blogging, and now you have YouTubers and Instagram gardener people. And GardenComm really allowed us to find those people to share our plants with, to share those stories with, and then in turn share their stories with our products. And it's a lot harder to do than you would think to find qualified people who can get that really great information out there, who aren't going to spread all the old wives' tales and you should do this to blue your hydrangeas because you should really just use aluminum sulfate to do that and not put pennies in your soil. And we are always looking for those people who can tell our stories and tell them in a factual way. And GardenComm connects us to those people, and it's been invaluable.
Awesome.
Yeah, and if I can add on to what Shannon was talking about, because for us, that's what's great about GardenComm for us too, in a couple different ways. So like, our product started in the greenhouse industry, and we always have focused on contacting the professionals, finding out what problems they're facing when they're watering and whatnot, finding those solutions and then giving it back to them to try it. And GardenComm for us is the same way on the retail side, where we're able to connect to these GardenComm members that are really professional gardeners. And they can test out our products, give us feedback so we can keep improving them before we hit the market to the consumers. So that's something that we're able to get out of it too.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I'm really glad that you guys brought that up, because I think that's one thing that GardenComm is really the hub of communications for the green industry. So whether that's, you know, we've got organizations who are trying to get the word out about tree care, or, you know, companies that are trying to get out new products and those types of things. GardenComm members are those folks that you can really rely on to help get out the message to their audience. So, all right, Joe, what's the next question you got
Good.
there?
Well, being the host, I get to jump in and say something before I ask the next question, because you can't stop me. But
That's all right. Go for it.
I wanted Jessica, because I wanted to mention this, and you just talked about how you get products into the hands of the garden communicators, and we can give you feedback. And you were one of the first people I met at my first symposium on the trade floor, and I'm learning about your products more and more. And you hooked me up with one of your watering cans. And that was well over 10 years ago. It was probably 12 or 13 years ago. And I ran out of here in a second ago to go grab it out of my hallway, but I don't have it here because it's in my garden, because I use it all the time. Still, that very one from 13 years ago, because it holds up so well, and it's just a good performer. So there's some feedback right there for you, but that's another fun experience of getting to know the people that are there at the show. And just throughout the year, but that was a real-time event. So to the question on number 2, what is the one thing, or what is something that sticks out for you with your experience in GardenComm that was meaningful or memorable or had an impact on you? Did someone give you a hand up or elevate your brand or your business? Or did you connect with someone that opened a door for the industry? A memorable experience, somebody?
That is a great question. And I think Noelle probably has a great answer for that.
I'm really excited to answer this one. You know, one of the opportunities with networking is we share our stories, we share our successes and our struggles. And Katie Elzer Peters is a wonderful person, and she knew I was struggling with overwhelm and high demand for my in-person consultation services, where I meet with clients and help them with their gardens. And she heard of an online workshop being offered by Teresa Lowe, who some of you know, and that was to help people like me turn our knowledge into a digital product, an online class, and how to, the steps to do that and how to market that. And that was a huge game changer to me. And, you know, 3 years later, I've been doing it, and it's allowed me to broaden my reach to people. I spend a lot less, there's no overwhelm. I'm actually making nice dinners for my family and not just out of the box because I have time. And, you know, I now make 6-figure income from online content, which still shocks me. It shocks my husband to no end. But that was a huge thing for me.
And that's great. Deborah, or somebody had a question or wanted to answer?
I was just turning my mic back on, but yeah, I'd love to just talk about a few experiences. There's such a collegiality and reciprocity among members. And I just think one of the things that I've experienced is that we are on board to help each other promote our projects. So when I have books published, other GardenComm members review them for me, and vice versa. When I want to share something online, someone like Joellen Myers-Sharp, she reposts every single thing I post about what I'm doing on Facebook. So it can be from large to small, but you just feel like you're in a community, and you know other people are interested in what you're doing and want to lend a hand to share what they're doing.
Absolutely agree.
I do have a story that I wanted to share that just kind of, to me, explains a little bit more about what GardenComm really is when you get involved in it. And so it's actually my first time at the show. So my first show was in Oklahoma, And I was 6 months into the company, and I knew the company and I knew our products, but I didn't actually have a horticulture background. I didn't know much about gardening at all. And I was so nervous to come to this show because I thought everybody's gonna hate me. They're just gonna be like, you don't even know what you're talking about with the plants. And so we do the show, and the first garden writer comes in and starts talking to me, and we introduced cutting tools that year. And so I was talking about, the blades and all that. And then she asked me, she's like, oh, is this really good for a specific plant? And I went silent, and I was like, oh, I am very sorry. I can tell you the cutting capacity and how we make it, but I don't know that much about that plant. And it was silent for a minute. And she looks at me and she says, that's okay. We'll teach you. And I feel like that sums up GardenComm so well, is that you don't have to know everything. That's why you're here. We're all here to watch you grow with us. We want to learn from you, and we want you to teach us stuff. And I remember we did at that show, we had the tours, and that garden member came up to me several times and was showing me the different plants and really introducing me to the beauty of gardening. And still today, I so appreciate that.
Absolutely. And one thing that, I will say that as a member of GardenComm and my participation in this organization is that there's really just such a nice relationship between the members who are like allied members, and those are our kind of our corporate members, versus the individual members, and just the way that they connect, the way they work together. And it's really just this well-oiled machine that just really works well. And it's just like, I think it's just an invaluable resource. Joe, what's your next question?
The next one is, what's the best way to network and become involved to make the most of membership? People may not know this or believe it, but I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert. But I would go to GardenComm like in the early years, not knowing anybody. Of course, the first year, I mean, I knew a few people, but I never met I don't know if I've met any of them in person prior to that, because that was a real opportunity to get everybody together and basically under one roof and put faces with names. I mean, these days it's different because we're all on social media way more than back then, but there's no substitute for getting together face to face in real time, and there's no better place to do that than through GardenComm. And Deborah, I mentioned it before, but just you and others that I met for the first time, became instant friends. And it was just something I look forward to every time after that. And I keep referring to just that annual event, but all through the year, through the regional meetings and through the networking and communication that we would have, it was fantastic. But whether you're an introvert or not, there's enough extroverts out in this group to come up to you and introduce themselves. And it really makes it easier for you to feel welcomed, which they do a great job of. And then it empowers you to feel like you can go up to these people that you might be intimidated otherwise, or that you maybe have a book idea, but you don't really know any publishers other than the ones that are there, and you introduce yourself. And they're not surprisingly, but unbelievably open and welcoming and cordial and interested. And it's just amazing, all the opportunities that come from that. So with that, the question again is, what's the best way to network and become involved to make the most of your membership?
Sean and Allison.
Sorry. Well, for us being so kind of new still, we've only been to one in-person event. It's hard to imagine that, we've only seen everybody really once in person, and maybe at the Northwest Flower Garden Show. But we were able to just get around and meet everybody. We were so excited to be there. We had just left our previous careers and we were just like ready to go. So we met everybody.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different ways to mix and mingle with people too, whether it's going to the conventions and just jumping right in. And there's all these events that just make you interact, whether you're an introvert or extrovert. And then there's also the regional meetings, but there's also online. What are they? There's different meetups online. So there's lots of different ways.
I know. And we were able to connect with Deborah, who we are so thankful to connect us with.
I think we met at the airport leaving Salt Lake City. We hadn't met at the symposium, but another person at the airport was like, you got to meet each other. You're all in the same market. And like, even that was serendipitous, right?
It was so, it was a wonderful connection, so brief, but then we were able to carry that on and meet in Seattle. We met in Federal Way. I mean, we've been able to meet up a few times, and we just have nothing but gratitude for everybody we've reached out to.
I
Yeah.
just think sitting here looking at everyone on the screen, I have a personal story about a conversation. I might not remember the year, but like for Shannon, it was probably sitting on the bus together, right? Like that is
The best.
I had
right?
dinner with you on my first conference. It was,
Yeah.
that was,
Yeah, we didn't even really talk about gardening. We were talking about other stuff in life, but that's our friendship.
Mhm.
And so that's a great question. I wanted to ask Shannon about your experience with maybe some of the conferences, the in-person conferences, and sort of the networking that happens there. I wanted to get your take on what your experience has been.
Oh man. So also team introvert, hardcore, which is always great when you're being sent by your company to go talk to strangers. But you're getting paid to do it, so you have to do it, right? Yeah, my first conference was in Tucson, which is that was an experience, and sitting on the bus, going to all the gardens, and I was in a very similar boat to Jessica, where when I started, I knew our products, I knew shrubs, but someone would ask me a perennial question, or especially down in the Southwest, I had no idea what any of those plants were, and walking around the gardens and having everyone be so helpful and open and welcoming. And I also remember my first regional meeting where I met so many people that I'm still in constant contact with today. And I'm rambling. There's so many memories going through my mind right now. I can't even, or just dinners after. I think my last one was a few years ago. Obviously, it was a few years ago, but I had dinner with Doug Oster, who was a constant contact and friend when he was working on his projects, and just being able to sit down and chat with someone, and whether it was about gardening or something else, just those in-person meetings, not only just the conference and the big events, but all those small moments in between are really where you can find all those connections.
Definitely.
There's so many moments in my head right now. Can't even.
Noelle, you had something to add.
I do. So my first conference was the Pasadena conference in 2015. Brand new, knew some people by reputation. And that first day I got on the bus for the tours, and I sat next to the person who would end up becoming one of my most dear friends in the whole world. And that's Andrea Whiteley. She's from Australia. She came all the way out to the conference. And, one of the things I like about the bus rides and the tours and things is everybody tends to sit each time by somebody new. They want to get to know someone new. It's where those networking conversations come into place. And, if you're watching this, and I'm seeing the chat and the introverts and all, but you know what? We are all crazy about gardening. And sometimes it's hard for the regular people in our lives to understand that. And it's so fun to be around a tribe of people who get it and who understand us, and who are just as nuts about it as we are. And it's just awesome.
Well, I'm going to add one thing, and this was my first experience with being a member at GardenComm. My first sort of show was the one in Dallas, and I came from a consumer electronic background. I used to go to CES where there were hundreds of thousands of people, and my experience at that GardenComm show was, my mouth was sore at the end of the day, because all these gardeners are introverts. I guarantee you they were all asking questions, and I talked to like every single one of them, and I was just like, I think I've talked to more people at this event than I have at those consumer electronic shows. So gardeners may be introverts, but boy, I tell you what, they are curious, they ask questions. And I think that these in-person events are just great opportunities to really discover what's new, form new relationships, and just it involves just talking to people. So even if you're an introvert, get out there, say hello, and you just don't know where that's going to lead. Joe, what's your next question?
Okay. And I just have to triple echo the bus ride seat experience. It is, there's nothing better because you're on that tour and you've got what, 30 minutes or whatever to get to that next destination. And I made a point of doing that. And again, we talk about this introvert thing. That's not easy for an introvert to do, but you make yourself do it. And if it's a lot of the good things that happened to me in my career, once I became a member, happened from sitting next to a stranger on a bus seat, including Teresa Lowe, who became my co-executive producer. And I hired her before the show ever started from my conversation with her on the bus on a rainy night in Portland. We did a Portland thing, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And she's obviously a very, very dear friend and a very important part of my business life. And it came from that seat on the bus on that one night at GardenComm. Okay. What would you say to somebody in a professional green industry communicator or content creator that is not familiar with GardenComm?
I think that's a great question for Sean and Allison.
I think for us, we would tell them, jump in, and there's so many opportunities to not only be a part of a great organization like GardenComm, but to be creative and come up with ideas. Everybody here has met somebody to go on to a huge project or even just a project that's led them down the road to more projects. And even for online content creators, I mean, it's a huge opportunity.
It blows my mind just how many connections that have been made since we walked through that door, in 2019. It's amazing.
Definitely. And I would also love to hear from Jessica from the allied member kind of business side of things, how you've been able to kind of work with those people who are creating that content.
Yeah, oh my gosh, there's so much. Like I kind of mentioned, like one of our favorite aspects of GardenComm is being able to connect with what I like to call GardenComm members, like really garden celebrities, because not only do you guys are entrepreneurs that are creating radio, podcasts, YouTube channels and that, but like also like just the community in general knows that you're knowledgeable in that area and passionate about it and comes to you for knowledge. And so for DRAM to be able to connect with you guys and have our products in your hands that you get to test it out and we get to hear your feedback is huge. And then additional bonus is the fact that if you do like it, you guys do tend to mention us and spread the word about our products. And this community is definitely a place that you're going to connect. And it's when you go to a show and you start talk about everything that you're working on, because you'll be impressed with how somebody who might give you a different perspective or know somebody at GardenComm that can get you connected to whatever you're looking for. I've overheard many conversations at these events where somebody's like, oh, yeah, I was thinking about doing something with houseplants. And like, the editor from Fine Gardening is like, oh my God, I'm working on an article about that. And I don't have any pictures of that. And they're like, yeah, I got pictures galore. And right there, you just made that connection. Or, there's so many GardenComm members that I'm sure have started podcasts together or radio programs together, just connecting like that. So definitely open yourself up to the possibility that anything's really possible as you're connecting with people.
Yeah, 100%. I'm going to get to Noel, but I just wanted to add that it's like there's a lot of people who are attending this free conference that are content creators on social media or they're editors of magazines, and that it's like this is such a good way to learn about new products. But also, if you're looking for ideas to share on your social media channel, it's like this is such a great organization to really discover those things, and you will have an endless supply of content. So Noel, you had a question.
Well, and as communicators, we have a message. We're trying to communicate and taking advantage of with GardenComm's resources and all that allows your message to go further. And the last in-person conference, I was actually approached by an editor and said, Noel, I need you to write a book. And I need you to write a book for us. And I hadn't even put in a proposal and it wasn't on my radar or anything like that. So people are also, and you'll find them there, people are looking for people and communicators to communicate in areas that are really important. And so it's just amazing.
Yeah. Deborah, you had something to add?
Yeah, I just feel like I want to put the perspective in from being a past president and being on the executive team of leadership over the years. First of all, Chris, I'm so thrilled that you're our executive director now, and that
Mhm.
you and your wife are keeping us in ship shape. But I think our industry has changed, and so much. When I got into garden writers or GardenComm, the number of people who had staff writing and editorial positions in media was very high, maybe over 50%. And that has changed. And we need GardenComm more, because now we're all solopreneurs. We don't have colleagues in the office. It's rare. And in my, maybe the allied members, but it's rare for the communicators. And so to join an organization where you can create your like water cooler conversations in an instant, it's replaced what the industry lost because of the disruption of media. So having, if you just need a reason to join, that would be the first one. Is you're going to all of a sudden have this network of people around the globe in categories that you're interested in, that you can toss around ideas and not have to just be by yourself behind the keyboard and the camera, feeling alone.
Yeah. And Shannon, you had a comment?
Yeah, I'll just add to that, brands want to help you be successful, and we have a ton of resources at our disposal that we want to share with you. And when you join an organization like this, you can be connected to those brands, and you can find those people who can get you the photos you need for your book. If you need a picture of, hydrangea schizophragma and it's doing this and that, and like, you might not have that in your own garden, but we have those photos for you. We have those resources for you. If you are giving a talk and you need handouts, we have all of that, and we make it to give to you to distribute. And we are always looking for new avenues to distribute those resources, to help tell the story of gardening, to bring in new gardeners. And we are here for you as members. And it is so much easier to be connected through an organization like this, so that we can help you out and get you all those materials that you need, so that you don't have to take every single picture for your next project. You don't have to have everything done by yourself. There are people here to help you, and we have all of that available.
Well, I think you bring up a really good point, because, depending on which source you cite for the new gardeners that came out of 2020 and COVID, 16 million, 18 million new gardeners, whatever. It's like they are actively out there seeking information, and GardenComm members bring that information to them. And if you're able to work with these allied members who have this type of content, it is just such a great relationship to have. And you know that you're getting good information out there to your audience. And I think if you're a content creator, you want to be putting out the most accurate information as possible, because it's your reputation as well. And I think this helps ensure that you're doing that. All right, Joe, what's your next question?
Well, I'm really kind of out of listed questions, but I wanted to open up the floor for the attendees to see if they had any questions that they could ask of the panel. But certainly we can fill in the voids while we're waiting, but certainly let's throw that out and get some questions from the audience.
Well, and then I think it's also a good opportunity to, we're talking about, hey, we're all introverts. We all enjoy the networking. And I think the virtual conference that happens in 2 weeks, it starts October 12th, is a great opportunity to really get involved, come hear the sessions. There's going to be a bunch of educational sessions, not only in professional development, but there's also things about particular topics that you will learn, great things about, whether it's the soil or those types of things, that you're going to get a ton of great information. One, it's going to give you additional content that you can share on your social networks, but it's going to help develop your professional skills. There's just the networking. Everybody talks about networking. So you can't sit next to somebody on the bus, sit next to them in a panel discussion, sit next to them in a session, and just say hello, ask questions. You don't know where that's going to lead, but it's going to lead somewhere. As the session title is titled, Can't Talk Today, it all starts with GardenComm. because it really does. It just, the first question or the first person that you meet, it will snowball and lead to something.
Yep, and Chris, like you said, too, during the virtual booth, if there's like a break session, there's a lot of like on the actual website, there's like little table discussions that you can just pop in. It's kind of essentially a virtual bus. So feel free
That's
to
a good point.
bump in there and say hi, and you'll, like Chris says, you'll be surprised where the conversation goes.
Yeah. Well, I don't see any questions from in the chat, but is like anybody else have any things that they want to interject? Because I mean, I've been a member since 2010, and just my participation within this organization, the people that I've met, all of you who are on the panel, I share, a personal relationship with, as well as, a business relationship with, but it's just been invaluable to me. And I think that is something that either an individual member or potential allied member, those are all things that are this organization is all about. And so I'm happy to be kind of leading this. And I will say, we talked about the in-person event, so this is going to give me an opportunity to talk about the in-person event that's coming next year. It is our 75th anniversary, and we will be together again in Minneapolis. And I'm so excited about that, celebrating our 75th anniversary. And we've got a ton of stuff going on. I don't know if you guys even know this, but we've actually co-located with another show, which is the Garden Center Magazine Conference and Expo. So what we're doing is bringing together Garden Center owners with garden communicators, and it's really to help connect them. And not only is it going to provide opportunities for GardenComm members, but Garden Center owners can connect with garden communicators and be helping to create that content for them. So I'm really excited about that.
Hey, Chris, we've got 2 questions that have come in.
Oh,
Do we want
I
to?
missed them.
Yeah, they're
What?
in the Q&A section.
Yeah, sorry about that, Perla.
Okay.
All right, so what have you changed since the pandemic about the way you work and conduct your communications business?
We can answer that.
Well, I think, Noelle, you've got a perfect solution for that.
Luckily I had started the digital stuff before the pandemic, so it was well on my way. But what has changed, Perla, is people who are even more resistant to virtual meetups or virtual learning. Our whole world changed so quickly. And so what's changed with my business is people are more willing to embrace online content and learning in that way, because they can't go to all the places or they can't go to in-person classes. And I was hired by a nursery chain, and they used to have in-person classes. And instead they hired me to give, they pay me to give webinars that they offer free to their customers. And then the customers will come and buy the product. So typically when they used to be limited to maybe 30 people in their classroom, now we can have up to 160 people attending a webinar. And so I used to do lots of in-person speaking. I rarely do any now. I like to do it, but boy, it's just 90% virtual now.
And I think there's a lot to be said for that, because I will tell you that I attended the conference. I think a lot of you attended Cultivate. I'll tell you what, I came back from that in-person event. Don't know what bug I ended up getting, but you still get sick. I mean, there's still the opportunity to get sick at these things. So it's like, I love the fact that you can do virtual and you don't have to, worry about that. And that's a good thing.
Well, and too, like, especially GardenComm with the Order Ease website, they have done a phenomenal job of making it as close to being in person as you possibly can. Where we get to see everybody's faces. And like I talked about, like those little individual desktop discussions that you can do. I think that makes it a lot easier to still try to get that one-on-one connection.
Yeah. And I'm also going to add, because we didn't talk about this, but for the virtual event, there's a pitch the editor session. This is 2 days. If you have ideas about writing a book, publishing articles or photography or any of those kinds of things, this is an opportunity for you to get in front of the best editors within the industry. And Deborah Prinzing is one of those editors. You can actually get a chance to, pitch your ideas. And where else can you get that opportunity at GardenComm? All right. Well, I think.
Do you want to end? There's one other question, just to make sure you didn't miss that.
What was the other question? I missed
From
it.
Carol Michael, what's the one piece of advice you'd give a new person joining in this era of virtual social media and screens?
Who wants to-
I'll just, while you're all thinking, I'll just tell you this. It's hard, you can't get away from the flood of posts coming at you, whatever social media channel you're on. And, as gardeners, we follow other gardeners. And, we all know that, people are showing their Instagram best or Facebook best, and they don't show the weeds and everything. And so we're always feeling like, gosh, my garden doesn't measure up to that or whatever. But I'd also say that if you're trying to, be a player in this industry or in this media, be yourself. Contentment is destroyed by comparison. And so when we're comparing ourselves to others and trying to do what they do, we're not being true to ourselves. We're not being authentic. And I think people buy authenticity over anything else. And they want to see the realness. They want to see behind the scenes. They want to see the weeds. They want to know that you struggle with that stuff like everybody else. And that's endearing to them. And so as we're, fighting this Instagram phase of perfection, I think we just need to put our blinders onto that and be who we are.
When I post mistakes or other things, those posts get so much more response and so much more engagement than the so-called perfect.
Yeah.
So don't be perfect. Don't wait till you're perfect to get on. Don't wait till you have the perfect video equipment or whatever. I mean, everybody's got a phone and you can do very well with that. Just jump in.
Well, I think it also highlights the fact that everybody's got their own lane. Nobody else is you. And if you're being your authentic you, you've got your own channel. You don't have to worry about what other people are doing. And there's room for everybody in this space.
I think Sean and Allison, you guys do a great job with your YouTube channel.
Oh,
And
thank
you've
you.
really taken that lane and
You're
just done so
definitely a
well.
learn as you go process.
Well, we try to be
It
as
is.
authentic, we try to be as authentic as possible. And
Absolutely.
we get a lot of questions and about what people see behind the scenes or around us, not maybe specifically what we're talking about. And just for us, I mean, it's part of the authenticity that you guys are talking about, is to answer those questions and be truthful and say, well, yeah, that didn't go so well, or
Those stem cuttings didn't root. So
yeah,
what do you do?
or the squirrel destroyed it. What are you gonna do?
And I think it also highlights that it's okay to make, you're not always going to be successful in everything that you try. So, I mean, I think that's something that a lot of these new gardeners, they can get dejected that, oh, they killed a plant or whatever. It's like, hey, guess what? We all do it.
Oh yeah.
Hey, I have a bit of advice that I want to share, if that's okay. It's not exactly about screens or media or technology, but it's about relationships. Can I jump in?
Yes, please.
I learned this lesson very early on at, I think we were in maybe the Brandywine Valley symposium. So it was maybe 2010 or 11. And I was at the opening cocktail party, and this person I knew who was from the West Coast, another freelance writer, came up to me and she had a list on a piece of paper. And she said, this is my hit list of who I want to meet and pitch while I'm here. Can you help me find everybody? And I just was horrified. And I just looked at her and I said, that's not how we operate here. We don't have a hit list, for one thing. I said, what matters here are relationships. And the example I gave to her was, for everybody who I've met through GardenComm and editors and allied members who I've done freelance work for, my value is the friendship. And if I never work with them again, like James Baggett, I long ago decided, if I never get a check from him again, it will not matter, because the friendship's more important. And I just think that back to being authentic, that's just my philosophy. I think when Sean and Allison were talking about, just being who they are, all of us have learned that that's just how garden writers and GardenComm operates, is just treat it as a relationship business and you'll be rewarded with relationships. And then whatever happens is a bonus.
Nice.
That is a very excellent note to end on. And I want to thank each and every one of our panelists and Joe for hosting this panel discussion. Can't tell you how much I appreciate your time this morning. And again, you guys can take advantage of everything that is going on today. Go to the Network Lounge and look into the virtual conference. I think you will find that there's some great value to be participating in that as well. So thank you all so much. We're going to close this out and we'll see you on the next session with HRI. And we're going to be talking about native plants and pollinator research. So thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.